Good day there, fellow Revit users and developers. Today I'd like to take a few minutes and talk to you all about build events, particularly inside of Revit, but we will talk about them inside of Visual Studio 2, limitedly. Now, what do build events do? Build events allows you to launch and debug Revit from your IDE, meaning if you want to step through your program, you can go ahead and launch your debugger from your IDE and you can see how everything works step by step. There's other ways to do that. You can use Jeremy's plugin and you can attach the process. I'll probably do a video on that later, but for today I just want to stick to the good old tried and true way of just launching Revit straight from Writer or Visual Studio, and that way you can be sure that you're getting exactly what you're looking for. For those of you who haven't tried out Writer and looking for something just a little different than Visual Studio, something a little faster, responsive, like ReSharper on steroids, well, that's pretty much Writer. If you do decide to give Writer a shot, JetBrains does have a 30-day free trial. I've heard rumor that you can extend it through different offers. But just let them know that Chris with Valor VDC sent you. Go ahead and jump into Writer, and we will start this process. Now, what build events are, is like I said earlier, is just a way in order to launch Revit from your IDE, particularly Writer. So inside of Writer, how do you get to that? The easiest way I found is just to go to your C# solution, right click on it, go to Properties, and then it just brings it up. The same way in Visual Studio. Remember, Writer and Visual Studio is pretty much the same, just different ways of getting to things. And inside of Writer, once you bring this up, you'll get these other things here. You can pretty much ignore them. You don't use them during the debugging process, but you will use them later when you do publish your app. But I haven't got that far yet. So an easy way to do it. So the first thing you got to do is you got to build what they call a build event. And your build event tells it's pretty much a Windows command line event. So if you ever use command line or terminal in Mac, it's pretty much that dull, generic little underlying program that actually runs Windows behind the scenes, but you don't see it because you're using the prettier UI such as these windows. So the first way, I'm not going to type it, but I'm going to walk you through it and show you what it does. The first way to build a build event is, this is just a very generic way that I learned from Jeremy's course on LinkedIn. If you are looking for a good course for Revit, this is where I started. It's a little dated. It's from 2018, but it is a good course. I just want to give props where props is because that's where I took this code from. So this is where I found it. The one thing I will say is in this course, Jeremy uses CHM files in order to find all of your methods, constructors, and everything else, which we nowadays use as an industry standard Revit API docs. But other than that, it's pretty much solid. There are a few times you will get an error and you have to Google the solution, which will only help you learn how to code more because that's what you do as a coder. It's not like TV where keys are just flying. I recommend it along with a lot of other YouTube courses. But without further ado, let's get back into build events. So what he spelled out in this course is this is a very basic build event, which what it does is it copies everything from your solution that you need in order to run it inside of Revit. So it copies a DLL and it copies the add-in here. And the add-in file is what directs Revit to open up your DLL in a certain folder. So Basically, and I will put this in the comments the best I can, basically it's copy, and then you have quotation marks, and then you have a $sign, and then target directory. Your target directory is your DLL file, your add-in file, and your PDB file, which is your debugging file. That's what your target directory is. That's what it's copying, because you're telling it to copy this target directory and anything that ends with a point, a dot. So everything down here, let me go ahead and pull this up here, is basically copied. And then you tell it where to go, which is another $sign. It's kind of like a shortcut, so you don't have to type in C:, your user folder, What that does is it just cuts out all that BS and says, hey, put it in app data right here, the Autodesk add-in folder, which is right here. And if I was to expand this out a little bit, you can get the whole folder run where it goes. And that's pretty much what it does. And once you direct it to go here, when you do your build, so if I was to go in here and click OK and then hit build events, what it's doing is it's going to go ahead and build it. And unfortunately, it doesn't want to copy it because I didn't do anything different. So let me go in here and just change something here from, make that an element. And then go back in here and let's go ahead and use the tried and true Control-Shift-B, and here it goes. So, taking everything from your folder that your solution is in, the bin, the debug folder. So if I was to go here and then go to my writer folder, and then go to the folder that I have it in, so you can see this is your typical solution folder here, and then you click in there and you go to bin, debug. It's going to take all three of these files because they all end with a dot add-in, DLL, program, debug database. They all end with a dot, and it's going to copy it to here, which is your Autodesk. If I were to go here, app data, and it's going to tell you that it's my name, app data, your C drive, all the way into here. And so when you launch Revit, Revit will automatically read this add-in folder and it will know to launch these DLLs. Now, I don't like to do it this way. I like to do it where I set up a folder and all these get launched into the folder. So I have my DLLs here, just like Jeremy's add-in. He does the same thing, because as you start adding more and more DLLs and you're coding more and more, this add-ins folder is just going to get filled with crap. And it's just nice to have the add-ins here and not these DLLs. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to delete these yet. And now that you've copied them from here to here, you now have to run Revit, which inside of Writer is a little bit more difficult than Visual Studio, but UVS guys, don't worry, I'm going to get there. And once you do that, you have to go in here and you have to actually create a configuration to run. And it's super simple, so we'll just go ahead and delete this one here. And we'll create one. So we're going to call this, and unlike Visual Studio, it's going to ask you, what are you trying to launch? And I'm going to say, I want to launch an executable file, and I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it the YouTube test. And it's going to ask me, well, what path do you want to launch? This is the program. This is your Revit program. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to your C drive. You're going to go to Program Files. You're going to go to Autodesk. You're going to scroll down here to Revit 2021, because that's what this is in. It doesn't matter what year it is. You just have to select the right year, and then you're going to endlessly scroll down through all these DLLs that Autodesk created for us over the years, and you're going to find the Revit exe file. And that's all you're going to do. You're going to select it, and you're going to open it. And then when you do that, it's going to generate this. And bam, you're done. So all you got to do is just click OK. I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to hit the debug button. I didn't set any breakpoints up, so nothing special is going to happen here. And what debug is going to do is it's going to launch Revit, and then Revit's going to come up. And it's going to be in debug mode, pretty much. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that now because you can see that Revit's launched and everything is fine. Once it launches, then your apps will come in and it'll ask you, do you want to load? You've probably been through this before, doing different stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. Now, moving on. Visual Studio. Visual Studio is about the same way, but it's a little easier. I'm going to throw that in there. You can launch it from two places. You can launch it from here and go to Properties, and you can get to your build events from there, or you can go to Debug and you can come down here and you get to your build events from there. So you got your build events, and the difference with Visual Studio versus Rider with build events is you can double click inside of here. Typically, not double click, but you can hit this and you can type everything in and it gives you macros to follow. Rider will give you some macros, but not as many as you're typing, but Visual Studio will dress it up a lot better. So here's your build events, and then inside of Visual Studio, instead of having to exit this box like we did in Rider, all you got to do is just go to Debug and then click here, Browse, and then you can browse to wherever your Revit is installed, much like you did inside of Rider, and you can get to that folder and you can click on it and it will execute that here. This is another variation of the same program. But once I do that, then I can hit start and you will see that I'll get a framework error here, but that's okay. But it does start eventually. And you can see that everything goes gray, and then now this process is starting up and we'll see the Revit logo come in, and it's kind of tells you what's going on, but not very much. This is running on Parallels on my Mac, so it's going to run really slow. It's not my production PC. I do all my coding here, so I don't have to have a bunch of code that is half-baked that I downloaded from the internet and I'm looking at, but you can clearly see this launched. Now, if that's all you want to do is just copy all three of these into this folder, whoops, let me go back one, into this folder, do not load, do not load, do not load. We'll just say no to all those. And I'll come back into Visual Studio and I will stop the debugging process. So let me go ahead and hide that. So if you just want to go that route and just copy these files into your add-ins folder, you can. One thing I did forget to I didn't mention very well is where your add-ins folder is located. So for the most part, your add-ins folder, this is probably the best one to copy things to and to work out of. There are other locations, but this is probably the best one. It's in your C drive, users, your name, app data, roaming, Autodesk, Revit, add-ins, and then whatever year of Revit you are using. So if I was to go back here, then you will see that this is here. That last Visual Studio project was in 2023. This one's in 2021. And that brings us back here. So, as I said, we copied all three of these in here, but we don't want that. because as you do more and more development, you're going to have more and more files copied into this folder, and then it's going to become endless. So what good, smart developers do is they go in there, and they delete these files along with anything that's not an add-in file. And what you do is you create a folder for it to go into, and all this stuff goes into it. So I'm going to delete this folder because we're going to want to see it generated. I'm going to take this and shrink this down a little bit so that we can almost get it on the screen with Writer and kind of see what's happening here. And this is the game shop. The same thing works in Visual Studio. So all you got to do is you got to go down here, you got to go back to Build Events, and you get rid of this. And then I go over here to a screen off to the side, and I take all this, and I copy this wonderful conglomerate of code in. And essentially, it's almost the same as what was there, but different. The first thing I do is I throw in this echo configuration, and from what I found on the internet, it pretty much will echo the command, meaning it kind of repeats it in some way. If there's someone out there in the comments that can elaborate on this better, I would greatly appreciate it, because a lot of the stuff is, oh, you turn it off, you do this, you do that. But when I looked at higher level developers, they always add this into the code. So I'm not sure exactly what it does, and as a early developer, I can't tell you precisely, but I just know that they have it in there, and it makes this work very well. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the folder. And so like I said, this is pretty much Windows command line stuff. So if you use get on the command line through PowerShell or through your Mac terminal or whatever else, then you'll understand where I'm going with this. If you've never used any command line commands, then this may be new to you. So all you got to do is just paste it in, and it should work. And change the years. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, if this folder doesn't exist, my Revit commands, then we're going to make the directory, because inside the command line, you don't call it a folder, you call it a directory, and that's how Writer does it too, because that's how developers talk. So, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have, if this doesn't exist, do this. And it's going to say inside your app data folder, because you can see I don't have it here now because I deleted it on the last go around. And it's going to say make this folder. And then if it does exist, I guess that's where this echo comes from. It just says, don't worry about it. Skip it. You don't need it because it's already there. So that's the first thing that we have in this build event. The next thing is we're going to use the xcopy command. And pretty much the original one had copy. This one is an xcopy command. And what it does is, let me go ahead and pull this up here. And Microsoft Learn has got a nice little page on xcopy. Xcopy is a little different than files. Xcopy copies files and directories, including subdirectories. So if you have more stuff in there, then it will copy subdirectories and other things. But the beauty about xcopy is it allows you to add extra stuff to it. So we have a Q in there and a Y. And what the Q does is it suppresses any messages that might come up while it's copying. So it doesn't bring up any messages in the background. And so it tells it to run quietly. And the Y command will also suppress messages, and it will overwrite anything in the existing folder without asking you, are you sure you want to overwrite this? Well, I did click on it and I decided that I wanted to do it. So yes, I want to definitely overwrite it. So that's what Y does. So you don't have to worry about it. You could put a dash in there and it will prompt you. But that is why we have the X and the Y here. So pretty much instead of using copy, we're using xcopy because it grabs everything. And then also, if you recall from the last time, we only had a star, or not a star, just a dot in between two empty quote marks. And the reason why is we told the copy command to copy anything that ended with a dot. .dll, .pdb, .addin. So it just copied everything with that dot. And so what we're doing this time around is we're copying by extension. So we add a star, it says copy everything that says DLL and throw it in there. And then we're doing the same thing with the PBD folder and also the add-in folder. But if you look at this command line command, it's saying that these go into your new Revit commands folder that you created on the line above. But the add-in folder goes into your Revit add-in folder when Revit boots up. And this is where all your add-ins exist. And this folder directs it to this folder that you can't see because I haven't built it yet. So now that we have all this here, don't worry, I'm going to throw this also in the comment and I'm going to pin it. So hopefully you guys will be able to grab it and copy it. So you don't have to type it. But you will have to change the year on everything. So if you're using 2023, whatever, 2010, don't know why you'd be that far back, but you could, all you got to do is change the year because Autodesk has not changed that sequencing yet. So, got that there. And so once I come back in here and I hit the nice little hammer to build that, and what it's going to do is it's building it, it's building it, it's building it, and all of a sudden 3 copies were filed. Oh, so now we build it and now we copied all these files. And what it's saying is it's copied all these files. And when we look over here, you can see I have a new file here, a new folder. And we also have our Revit commands right here. So what it did was it copied everything, all your DLLs into this folder. And your add-in folders here. So if I was to go here and hit, I don't know, we'll just launch it instead of doing debug. Revit launches and it reads everything. It's going to come up in just a second. And you'll be able to click on your add-in that you just added because it's going to ask you, do you want to always load or load once? Just click always load and it's going to go from there. So that's pretty much build events in a nutshell. We can always come back here and we can end it to end your debugging process or your planning process inside of Writer or Visual Studio. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more future great upcoming content. I do have a lot of stuff in the pipeline. A lot of stuff built. I just have to go through and edit it and cut it down from 3 hours to just a few on Revit families and stuff like that. So stay tuned and just don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And like I said, if you want to try out Writer, they do have a 30-day free download. Just let them know you heard it from me, Chris at Valor VDC, and I would greatly appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you, and good night.